You don't like preaching? Hey, you don't like preaching? Man, you must know somebody.
Quit poking the bear, because I'm in trouble for shaving, so. She thinks it's not fair that I can remove my gray easier than she can remove hers. Same thing that I did. All right, good morning, everybody. Volunteer, pass this out. Thanks. Thank you. Well, appreciate being alive and with you today. So, thanks to Dave for filling in. I hope you got something out of the video we found of Joe, and I think I enjoyed listening to him. He's a good speaker, and I think it was a nice review of some things we'd already been talking about and things we'll continue to talk about. Today we're in section 3, and in the handout today, just kind of really an outline of some of the highlights in each chapter. I don't know how far we'll get, and maybe we'll keep doing this next Sunday depending on that. But we'll just see where we're going. To set the stage for our conversation, if you'd open up to Romans chapter 7. In chapter 12, the question that is being addressed there is, why do Christians sin? And I don't know about you, but anytime that question comes up, it's hard not to think of Paul's discourse to the Romans in Romans chapter 7. And I'll read that if you'd like to read along or just listen. We're in Romans chapter 7. Thank you. Was there any extra? Perfect. Thanks. Thank you. Romans 7, beginning at verse 7, it says, "What then shall we say? That the law is sin? By no means. Yet if it had not been for the law, I would not have known sin. For I would not have known what it is to covet if the law had not said, you shall not covet. But sin, seizing the opportunity through the commandment, produced in me all kinds of covetousness. For apart from the law, sin lies dead. I was once alive apart from the law, but when the commandment came, sin came alive and I died." Summarize that for me. What did he just tell us about the law? Say that again. Yeah, it defines sin for us. It gives us the knowledge of what sin is. And of course, as Paul goes on here, that doesn't make the law bad. In fact, it's one of the good things about the law because it clearly defines for us right and wrong, which is kind of important that we know. So, going on, verse 10, "The very commandment that promised life proved to be death to me. For sin, seizing the opportunity through the commandment, deceived me, and through it killed me." So the law is holy, and the commandment is holy and righteous and good. You might think about it this way. Our response to it is where the problem begins, especially if our response is anything less than obedience. Verse 13, "So then, did that which is good then bring death to me? By no means. It was sin, producing death in me through what is good, in order that sin might be shown to be sin, and through the commandment might become sinful beyond measure. For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am of the flesh, sold under sin. For I do not understand my own actions, for I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing that I hate." You ever been caught up in sin like that? You know, I can't imagine that any of us haven't experienced that. We get caught up in something, and we know it's wrong, we know it's a sin, we know it's a problem, we know life could blow up on us because of this, and yet we keep doing it. This was the text of my very first sermon. Preached it in, I was probably 21 years old, 20 or 21. And Austin Seibert, remember sitting down in his basement while his wife, Emma Jean, made us pecan pie. And they were from the South. They knew how to make pecan pie. And this was the text that I preached on. Ooh, lots of memories flood back then. All right, where did I leave off? Now, verse 16, let's pick it up there. Verse 15, how about there? For I do not understand my own actions, for I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing that I hate. Now, if I do what I do not want, I agree with the law that it is good. So now it is no longer I who do it, but the sin that dwells within me. Is that an excuse? No, it's not an excuse. It's just, an acknowledgement, if you will. Verse 16, now if I do what I do not want, I agree with the law that it is good. So now it is no longer I who do it, but the sin that dwells within me. For I know that nothing good dwells in me, that is, in my flesh. For I have the desire to do what is right, but not the ability to carry it out. Who's writing this? What is he? I mean, he is, isn't he the guy we look to help us understand, to give us a model of how to live, of the power of Christ, the power of the Spirit in someone's life? I mean, he's part of that foundation upon which we stand today. And what's he saying to us? Exactly. For I know, 6:18, for I know that nothing good dwells in me, that is in my flesh, for I have the desire to do what is right, but not the ability to carry it out. For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I keep on doing. Now, if I do what I do not want, it is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells within me. So I find it to be the law that when I want to do right, evil lies close at hand. For I delight in the law of God in my inner being, but I see in my members another law, waging war against the law of my mind and making me captive to the law of sin that dwells in my members. Boy, if you needed a definition of addiction, there you go. There's the biblical definition of addiction. Wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from the body of death? Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ. Finally, some good news. Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then, I myself serve the law of God with my mind, but in my flesh I serve the law of sin. All right. Let's look at another one here, in Book of James. Oh, come on. There we go. James chapter 1, verses 13 and 14, 13 through 15. Let no one say when he is tempted, I am being tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, and he himself tempts no one. But each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desire. Then desire, when it has conceived, gives birth to sin. And sin, when it is fully grown, brings forth death. That's a great companion read, if you will, to Romans chapter 7. So in those two readings, what's the big takeaway?
There's a battle waging for Paul. There's a battle. At the end, he said, in my mind, I don't do a lot of that. So there is a battle, a spiritual battle.
Yep, absolutely.
And we're each responsible for our own spirit. It's not God, it's any of
Yep. 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 Um, yeah. Other thoughts? One of the things that James helps us to see in this too, and this is really the focus for those of you reading the book in chapter 12, this progression of sin. How does it start? How does it start? The answer is right there on your notes. How does it start?
Lust, desire, wish, want.
Well, the word I'm looking for is that desire. Yeah, exactly. However you want to say that. It's the idea that you start thinking about it, right? You start thinking about it. I think one of the things that's interesting to me about this process is, what does Romans 12 teach us? The first couple of verses of Romans 12.
Talks about transforming.
Renewing your mind, right? Renewing your mind. What's that?
Sacrificial living.
And explain that more, Sam. What do you mean by that?
Well, everybody has something they want, and if you decide that is something that you really give to Jesus and to yourself, that is a sacrifice. That's something you don't want to give up. And you should live in such a way that you are giving Jesus your best, not your second best.
I know I shared this recently about sacrificing. And as I think about that, and I want you to think about it too, and we've gone through this process already, but what do you sacrifice in your life? I mean, really, what do you really sacrifice for the church, for God, for us, the family? What are you sacrificing? Sometimes, maybe, sure.
Not very many people, but few sacrifice finances.
I don't think anybody's hurting because of what they're putting in the contribution. Well, let's just be honest. Yes. I said not everybody. But,
Which is
and
good to know that there are people that have that attitude that.
but remember, if it's out of abundance, it's not a sacrifice. But I'm not, yeah. And guys, I'm asking that question not to say that there isn't an answer to that, but really, what do you sacrifice? And as I thought about it, I thought, not much. I mean, honestly, not much. Let me ask you the question this way. What defines a sacrifice? What defines a sacrifice? Maybe that's where we should have started. When I finally came to that realization, and I think you guys have said it well, when we give up something we want, to just keep it simple, I realized that in my struggle with sin, it was all about my desire. Remember, and this is what James said, this is where it starts, okay? This is where it starts. And so when I realized, oh, that's my sacrifice. That's what I can give up. That really means something. That really means something. And the reason it means something is because I want it. But even more than this, I think, I want it and I know it's wrong. I want it and I know it's wrong. Because wanting something isn't necessarily wrong in itself. if you want something that's holy and righteous. And I hope you do, and I hope that's part of the reason we're all here. So it's not the wanting necessary, it's the wanting for things that are unholy, that are ungodly, that are shouldn't be a part of our lives as Christians.
The hard part is remembering that frequently we want to want something. I want to be the person God wants me to be, but I have that other desire that says I don't want to do that. And you want to be right, and that's the hard part. Remember, and it gets pretty deep very quick.
Mm-hmm. When I came to that understanding, I found a joy that I had never experienced before. And I think it was legit because I found a legit sacrifice, something that I really wanted. But it's interesting, too, to think, well, how hard was it, Rudy, for you to figure out, because it was an unholy thing, you know, why was that so hard? Well, Romans 7, okay? That's the answer to that question, Romans 7. And part of it, too, is, what is sin? Give me a description of sin.
John says it's lawlessness.
Fun. Pleasurable. Okay? The reason it's a temptation is because the reason that you want it, those are powerful reasons. And to turn around and make them a sacrifice, I found a lot of strength in that. I found a lot of joy in that. And I think for the first time in my life, I really felt like I was making a legitimate sacrifice. So if we look at our notes there, that desire process, has sin taken place yet at the desire? No, I think it's important to understand. Just because there's some filthy thinking rolling around in your head doesn't mean you've sinned yet. But the stage is being set for you, for me, to respond. And Joe talks about in the book, in that response, it begins with, asking ourselves, what do we focus on? What are we focusing on? And when you think about that, it's what does your mind dwell on? And the danger is the more that we think about sin and the possibility, do you think it gets easier to say no or harder? Well, I hope that's a duh question. Of course, the more that we think about something, because quite often the thinking involves what? When you're thinking about sin, what are you thinking about?
How do you get away with it?
Thank you. You're thinking about, how can I get away with it? How can I justify it? Or even, how can I make it not a sin? How can I make it not a sin? I'm amazed at how many times, and Joe has shared multiple examples of this in the book and also in his work with married couples. How often is the argument made to justify adultery, but I love him. I love her. Therefore, it must be okay, right? Because of how I feel. And so we can even get to that point in this process of sin where we don't even see sin as sin anymore. We've done such a good job of justifying it or talking ourselves into it. In this progression here of focus, too, he gives us, and I thought this was interesting, the strength that he talked about in here wasn't the strength to give it up, but it was the strength to break through the barriers that keep you from doing it. That really resonated with me. Because, I don't know, think about it this way. It's like you're contemplating it, you're thinking, you're focusing on it. This desire to do whatever this unholy thing is growing. But there's obstacles in your way that should keep you from doing it. But sometimes we're strong enough to overcome the obstacles. That's a scary thought. If you're not, what might that obstacle be? Maybe a fellow brother knows that I'm struggling with this, and he approaches me and he says, "Hey, Rudy, man, you got to go in a different direction." And I'm like, "You know what? You don't know what you're talking about. I'm done with you." And I just go on my way. That's what he's talking about, the strength to work through those obstacles. This is not a good thing, okay? This is not a good thing. But when you are able to do that, there's one more layer to get through. And that's the risk factor. And that's what he's talking about here, pending consequences. The idea. Now, sometimes I think people don't even get to that point. They don't even think of the risk or the pending consequences because they're just so moved by the desire. They're just so overwhelmed by it, and whatever they've done, they've broken through any barriers to keep them from doing it, and they just jump into it. And then, let's say it's drunk driving, and all of a sudden in the rearview mirror, the lights are on. The pending consequence idea is, are you cognizant of the risk that could take place? And the last question really is are you willing to take those risks or not? Have you ever stopped yourself from doing something you shouldn't do because you realize, this would hurt the family? This would hurt the family. That's the example. That's an example of justifying, or if you will, looking at pending consequences. And it's kind of a last straw, because if you're willing to take the risk, and usually that happens, I think, too, because you don't think about it, and you just go for it, and you just go for it. So when you go through this process, then you get to the point from desire to deceit. You've bought the lie at this point. You've bought the lie. And in many cases, we might have even been the ones that created the lie so that we can justify going through it. And then, of course, the disobedience, the actual act of doing it. And at that point, that's when the sin wreaks its havoc on us and the death comes. Other thoughts or reasons that you can think of beyond what we've discussed about why Christians sin? A thought that came into my mind. And again, here's my assessment part. I'm always about assessment, taking a look. What's the data in your life telling you about how you're doing right now? Another way and that's just my language in school. Do we believe Christians sin? I'm not sure everybody does. And I'm not, that's a big broad statement. That's not directed towards anybody here, but why might somebody make that statement that Christians don't sin? What would be the reasoning behind a statement like that, if somebody really believed it? And people do.
I've studied with people who do. They go right straight to John and say, well, you don't sin. Yeah, you do sin, and Paul himself, I say, you better person than Paul? Well, no. That's what Paul said, he's the greatest sin in all. Well, yeah, but I don't sin. Well, how do you not sin? You never have any law. And it was just a circular argument. It turns out to be, they don't want to believe what the truth is. That's just what it boils down to.
And I think that's just one of those dangerous places to be in. It's just a very dangerous place to be in.
I think so too, is our misconception of, once we're baptized, then we're okay, and to a point that's true, but you still have to avoid sin, but the once saved, always saved, the whole thing about Jesus and God loves us and everything, we just put the sin thing in the back of our mind, and we, especially the consequence, we don't think about that, we're just like, well, Jesus loves me, it's okay, and I'll get over it, and, that's kind of the way I think we categorize it sometimes.
Sure.
Some people have a weakness of mind when it comes to who they are and have trouble facing the truth.
Absolutely. Well, as we go on in this section of the book, chapter 13, we continue to answer this question about Christians sinning. In the next chapter, it was chapter 13, it says, how can pleasure be bad? And then just a couple of highlights here. Emotions aren't about what's right and wrong. They just are. I mean, I've said that for years. They just are. And because of that, emotions can be misleading.
Emotions are a tool. They're a hammer. You can use them whatever way you want to. You can use it for good or for bad. And most people forget that.
I think a point that was made about the emotions too is just because you feel good about something, does it mean it's good? I mean, think about that way. I got to tell you, there's been plenty of times in my life when I've been, knee deep in sin, and I felt really good about it. Had no problem with it, at least in that moment. How were emotions serving me then? I mean, they were misleading, weren't they? They were misleading. And so I guess can people take pleasure in unholiness?
Absolutely.
That's just another way to say that sin is fun. I mean, if it wasn't fun, it wouldn't be a what? A temptation. It wouldn't be a temptation, okay? Another thing that he talked about along this line too was this idea of the pleasure principle. It's about wanting pleasure, or what we think will bring us pleasure, and sometimes that can be confusing. And in Hebrews chapter 11, somebody read that for us, verses 24 and 25, please. Hebrews 11, 24 and 25.
By faith Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, and chose to suffer the people of God rather than to enjoy the fleeting pleasure of sin.
Even the Bible calls it fun. But it also makes the point, fleeting pleasures, not the kind of joy that, well, let's just say it the way it should be said, that is eternal. It's not even close to eternal. The pleasure principle, those that are reading the book, this was on page 171 and going on from there, this pleasure principle, and it's really, I think, just a kind of an expansion on this, what we saw, in this cycle of sin we talked about from James chapter 1, this desire, the deceit, the disobedience, the death. This pleasure principle, again, we're talking about being deceived, thinking that something will give you pleasure when it doesn't, but then you want it. Think about our very first example of this, and isn't it amazing as we study all of this, The Bible starts with the first act of deception, right after the creation, with Adam and Eve. And, so we have this talking snake, and I'm kind of amazed, when we think about that, this talking snake, and yet we still struggle with this idea of this spiritual realm out there. And that's why I think this study is so important for us, because I think we've been reading so many of these things and we just kind of dismiss it. For example, I want to share this with you. How many times was the word angels found in the scripture? And over 300, depending on the translation, up to 320. I finally did my math and looked it up. The word demons, remember, we studied a great deal about what angels are and demons are, or evil spirits, and they're two very different things, but two very real things. How many times does that word demon or evil spirit come up? Guess. I know in this study it feels like it, doesn't it? Around 80, again, depending on the translation. For example, if you're reading King James doesn't use the word demon, it uses evil spirits, but that's a perfect translation of that word as well. It's maybe not the most accurate, but it's a good translation of that word. And so, anyways, getting back to this process here, the deceiving, the wanting, leading to the doing. And what I like about this, it expands it a little bit, especially if you think about it from the context of addiction. Addiction is all about the repetition. You're getting caught in a cycle, and it's over and over and over. And so as you look at this pleasure principle, did you guys get the handout? Anybody else need one? All right. I can remember 1,000 times, if not 1,000,000 times, doing something I shouldn't have done and going and concluding, oh, nothing happened. Nothing happened. Except I had a good time. No one got hurt. I didn't get caught. But I had a good time. Where am I going with this? And it's even easier now. Because what I had to work through the first time, the dilemma in my head of knowing it wasn't right, knowing that it was wrong, knowing that it was a sin, and whatever I had to do to get through that wall, those barriers, so I could feel, I don't know if it's right to say comfortable enough, but I can't think of another way to say it. But from my own experience, absolutely comfortable enough to do it. That only makes it easier to do it again. And that's where we're in that pleasure principle. It's the repeating of it. It's the repeating of it. And to continue to do that justifying. I mean, that's what I was talking about. Nobody got hurt. It's all good. I'm having a good time. It's all good. And then at some point, it becomes something that controls you. The word that's used in the chapters is a craving. It's a craving, which is stronger than a desire. A desire really is something that's in your head. A craving is, I need this now. I need this now. You ever hear about an alcoholic justifying the drink? Huh?
Need another drink.
I need it. And it can, an example like that, it gets to the point where if you don't have it, the body starts actually hurting. There's physical problems. And only having a drink addresses those feelings for the moment. But again, if I'm feeling bad and I can do something bad that makes me feel good, it's a win-win, right? See, and that's just where that stinking thinking goes. We are out, at that point, we are literally out of control. And that's why the statement is made there is in most cases, well, the way Joe said it, can't be stopped without intervention. In other words, you're in so deep, you can't stop on your own anymore. Who's going to help those people? Now, sometimes things happen. We get to a point where, at this point, where people can't hide it anymore. And I want you to understand this. I use drinking here as an example of this, or alcoholism as an example of this. But this is true with any sin. It's true with any sin. I mean, sure, there's, well, I don't want to start going down that rabbit hole, but I just want you to see this. This isn't a speech for an AA meeting, okay? That's not what this is. All right, this is the progress that any sin follows as we seek pleasure. And then, of course, the point is, death. James 1:15. Then the desire. Where did it start? Desire. Then the desire, when it has conceived, gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is fully grown, brings forth death. 1 Corinthians 10, and I've got this on your sheet here, beginning at verse 12. Therefore, let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed, lest he fall. No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability, but with the temptation he will also provide the way of escape that you may endure it. So the question I put below that is, how does this happen in our lives? The failing to overcome temptation. How does that happen? The failing to overcome temptation. How does that happen? Keep it in the context of what we just read in 1 Corinthians 10. You didn't look for the way to escape. You didn't claim the promise from God to provide you a way out.
Still have cookies and milk.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And that honestly is a powerful example. And you guys have heard me say it before. If you learn anything from me,
Remove opportunities for failure.
Amen.
thank you. That is so true. Remove opportunities for failure. But getting back to my question, why do we fail at overcoming temptation? Because we don't look for what God promised us, an escape. And how many times in the last 2 months have I noted multiple times in the scriptures, and of course right now I can't give you one off the top of my head, so maybe you were listening and you can, where the scriptures tell us to pause, to wait. Those are powerful passages, and those are the times when we feel that desire that we need to pause, we need to wait, we need to assess, and we need to say, okay, God, where's my escape hatch? Where is it?
I truly believe he puts barriers
Absolutely,
in front of you
absolutely.
to keep you to pause. The second thing is, when we get into the habits, I've heard people that smoke, trying to quit smoking. And they always have a cup of coffee and a cigarette for breakfast or whatever. And it's
Yeah, I remember those days.
such a habit that they drink a cup of coffee, they want to light a cigarette. And so, again, you have to remove yourself from those areas that are going to cause you problems. And continue going. I was talking to a guy the other day.
Go for it.
And before he became a Christian, he said, I didn't want to become a Christian because I thought, well, I can't have any fun in life. You know? And of course, he's in a different mental state now that was, as you would say, stinking thinking. Because all that pleasurable stuff that he wanted to do ultimately causes us pain. You know, if you take the one drink and become an alcoholic, your life sucks. If you start having affairs. But whatever the sin is, it seems to be pleasure at the time. Down the road, it's going to cause you pain.
Mhm.
That's the mentality, and you touched on it. You have to see the ultimate consequences. When I walk into Walmart, I have no desire to filter anything. Because I don't want some security guard to tap me on the shoulder. Well, that's not, I don't even have that desire.
Right.
But that's one of the things, I don't want to be the guy on TV and go, is that David? I don't want to have to face those consequences, so I have no desire to take it. I guess that's the thought process we have to have with sin, is that I do not want to face this ultimate consequence.
Yeah.
I got a question on that first part of 1 Corinthians where it talks about, do you think you can stand? Is that talking about where if you're dealing with maybe not your own sin, but you're helping somebody else along the way, and you're helping, you're exposed to it, and you think you aren't going to be the one that falls into that trap?
That's certainly an application of that. It's, you know, I tried to present that in the context of that question, you know, do we sin? And for the person that has this attitude that no, as Christians don't sin, Paul's saying, be careful, because it's just a matter, another way to think about it, it's just a matter of time and you will fall. Right, yeah, yeah. I always thought that would be a fun one to post, you know, on the door of the church building when it's icy. Many applications here. I know. Yeah, I know.
Dan, I was just reading it in the Amplified Version, and it says, therefore let anyone who stands firm, immune to temptation, being overconfident and self-righteous.
That overconfidence is yeah.
It's not totally comparable. I was just talking with Keelan last week, and he and his girlfriend broke up. She was dealing with a lot of issues, eating disorders, and they both had kind of been each other's emotional support, but it was to the point, you know, he was thinking that would be there to help her get through this because she would do healthier things with him. But it got to the point where it was so hard for him to maintain his own mental health because he had his own struggles. And so you couldn't stand firm anymore. Couldn't stand firm anymore. But he made it so she broke up with him. So, like, you know, he didn't want to be. she was dogging at him so much that it was starting to not be, he wanted to start to not be. So, I mean,
I think one of the resources we don't go to when we are tempted in that is our family here. Help to talk to someone, you know, and, you know, we've all been through something. I mean, we're not, you know, it's not, we all haven't been through the same thing, but to have those relationships to build on, that we can go to someone here and feel that trust and God's love of, you know, setting us in the right direction and helping us to get back on track.
Yep.
So many times God has put people like that in our life, you know, and yes, you have to be careful who you talk to. I mean, you have to have a deep enough connection with that person to know that you can go to them, you know.
Yep.
That's what the relationship part is about.
Yep. Guys, we're out of time here, but I just want to wrap a couple things up. Obviously, we'll just pick up where we left off, chapter 14 for next week, and we're going to talk a lot about along the lines of those comments that you're making right now, because I think that's a huge piece we're missing. I really do. And I'm going to ask a hard question, and I've asked this before, but why don't we confess to each other? I mean, we don't. We don't. Now, maybe some of you, and this is true for me, I have some individuals that I confess to, but that hasn't really happened until maybe the last 2 years, honestly. And I tell you what, it's been a life changer for me. Now, Carlene answered part of the question about relationships and trust. And I want to remind you, why did I do that card party? Had nothing to do that I love whooping up on you in cards, because I do. I do. I really do.
Yeah, but you didn't win.
I know I didn't. The old card shark back here beat me out. And it should have. But it was about fellowship,
Absolutely.
about building relations, you know. Samantha, I'm not putting you on the spot, but you'll probably feel like it. But, you know, I've spent very little to no time with you outside of this building. And to be with you that night, to hear you laugh and just have fun, it was so good for my heart. It really was. And I got to see a little bit of you that I had never seen before, and I just feel a little more connected, you know, so thank you for that. And that was exactly my goal, for us to do that. But it's got to happen with some frequency. And I think it goes along, too, to something Dave was saying about, you know, fun. You know, if your definition of fun is this way and you become a child of God, that's a big swing. But what are we doing together that's fun? How are we meeting each other's need for pleasure, for joy, wholesome joy? I know one of the things that a couple of us guys are doing in the congregation, we bought those golf cards to make a commitment to each other. We're going to get together on a regular basis. Of course, then my wife figures out, you're going to be doing that how many weekends with these guys? Thankfully, she didn't do the math before we made that commitment. But it was about making a commitment of time, which yet time is sometimes a sacrifice. It's something we're not willing to sacrifice. But I saw this as an opportunity to spend some time with some people that are good for me. People I want to get to know better, have some fun with. And if you want to get in on that, it's not too late. Huh?
You can still buy those golf cards?
Unless they're sold out, they only have so many. But we can still get together regardless of the golf cart. But I think, I'd like to think from this study that, you know, if we just go through this study, like we so often go through other studies, and I know this is a condemning statement, but tell me if I'm not correct. But how many times do we go through a study and nothing changes?
Amen.
Nothing changes. So does that mean we didn't learn anything? Or that we don't care? Or that we're not listening to the prodding of God to move in directions we need to move? I don't want that to be said about this study.
I heard a sister yesterday say to me that one reason they haven't been here much is because her husband feels when church is over, it's like the rapture, poof, everybody's gone. He would like to have more fellowship after church to talk to people and that, you know, and for him it's real important to build those relationships and that. And that's one reason he doesn't like to come to church. I mean, there's probably other stuff, but that makes him feel like nobody cares about him, that, you know, nobody's there to inquire about how his week was or his day, or,
Sure.
you know, so just that talking to each other afterwards or before, you know, helps, like groundwork for that. So.
Absolutely. Guys, I've pushed the time, so we need to get ready for worship. Thank you for your attention, for your thoughts, and continued prayers as we continue this subject, this study.
You notice something as simple as the Lord's Supper talk? People need to pay attention and nobody does. How we heard it?
Mm-hmm.
We've already heard it 1,211 times.
Whoop, 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 whoop.